Timeless 106.1 FM KFFB. We do have our special guest with us, Senator John Boozman. And Senator, thanks so much for taking time and talking with us.
No, hey, Bob. Thank you so much, as always, for having me. We appreciate your show.
Boy, you have been one busy fella. I know you guys have finally passed that, appropriation of more money for the PPP program. You want to talk about that for just a moment?
It is good that this is coming, to fruition. We passed a package that was about $450 billion. $310 billion of that is earmarked for the PPP program, the payroll protection program. Also, another component that works for a lot of businesses that your listeners need to be aware of is the EIDL program. And that's a loan program. You can get a grant and you can also get a loan. But that works well for businesses too. That's something that your business people should inquire about. We added $50 billion for the loan part, $10 billion for the grant program of the EIDL. Gave another $75 billion to hospitals. We're very concerned about our community hospitals. The president's gotten that message. We gave the hospitals $100 billion. We're coming back now, giving it another $75 billion to prop them up. I know it was announced also that the people that don't have insurance, that have the COVID virus, they're going to file that as Medicare, so we don't have to worry about people that don't feel like they can pay a bill or are going to have a bill, not getting tested, not going to the doctor so that they can get the advice that they need regarding quarantine and keeping others safe. Also, we included $25 billion for testing, and that's a real, such a key component to all of this. We're starting to come out with these tests that can be done in 10, 15 minutes, done instantly. Those are really going to be a game changer. We need to gear up and produce many, many millions of those through the workforce as it gets back. That really would be a game changer if everybody could be tested easily and efficiently.
There's two aspects of this, too, that we need to talk about. One, Arkansas had 21,754 PPP loans approved for a total of $2.7 billion. But you said there's a bunch still on hold here in Arkansas.
Yeah, in the pipeline right now, in other words, waiting on hold for these new monies to be distributed is $1.1 billion. And so there's lots of people that are trying to take advantage of the loan program. Maybe they were a little bit late getting into the line, or maybe their banks. And again, this is through no fault of anyone, just interfacing with the SBA portals. SBA is one of our smallest agencies in government. All of a sudden, it was tasked to oversee this humongous program. So when you consider all that, things have actually done pretty well. But there's $1.1 billion in line, and then I believe that once people understand that there is a replenishment, we'll see a lot more applicants, and hopefully the people of Arkansas will take advantage of this program. It seems to be helpful. It's not perfect. We're in a situation that government spending can't replace the economy. We've got to get the economy working again. But I think this has been something that's been very helpful to a lot of businesses and employees.
So we encourage that business, if they haven't applied, do that today.
Yes.
Go right to your bank and fill out. It's a very simple form.
Very much so, because again, this is a popular program. I don't know how much longer this will last. Once those dollars hit the banks, but I would encourage those that are thinking about it to go ahead and apply, and also look at this EIDL program. They can ask their bankers about that too.
Now, one thing you talked about, more money going for testing, for the coronavirus. This is something that's so important for Arkansans to know. This came out yesterday with the governor, the Arkansas Surge campaign. For 2 days, surge testing. The governor's encouraging everyone, if you think you have symptoms like fever, cough, or shortness of breath, to get tested, because that's the biggest problem that we've had, just not enough people being tested.
You're exactly right, Bob. That's been a huge problem. Spending lots of money and lots of very bright people working on this throughout the country, trying to come up with a test that can be done rapidly. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. We need to encourage anybody that feels like they have are symptomatic at all, go ahead and get tested. And this is such a strange disease, Bob. In some people it's devastating. In others, the symptoms are fairly minor. But if you're having the cough, shortness of breath, even maybe if it's not a little bit of fever, even if it's not bothering you a great deal, go ahead and get tested so that you can protect yourself. But as importantly, protect others. I know that all of your listeners, the last thing any of us want to do is be in a situation where we give this to somebody else. And so that's the importance of testing.
And then we also need to talk about some of the dates that the governor's put in place, which I think is neat. Coming Monday, the elective procedures are going to be allowed. The restrictions will be lifting on that. Also, they're going to make decisions, and this is kind of a neat for roadmap. So many of our listeners go to restaurants frequently. Well, the restaurants have been closed down for inside dining, and April 29th, they'll have a decision about lifting the restrictions or putting restrictions on restaurants. Same as gyms on the 30th. May 1st, they'll have a lifting restrictions on salons and barbers, and on May 4th, the decision of lifting restrictions on places of worship and larger venues. All that has been kind of a roadmap for us to see the light at the end of the tunnel, maybe.
I think the governor's done a very, very good job. He's been in an impossible situation of trying to balance the economic needs and then also fighting the virus. The good news is, when you look at our statistics, Arkansas has done very, very well in the number of deaths, and sadly, any death is such a tragedy. But when you look at the ability that we've had in regard to getting people good medical care, and then also I think the people of Arkansas being very responsible with their social distancing, doing these things that we needed to do, keep the curve, bent down and spread it out. At some point, you do have to open back up, and like I said, the government spending can't replace the economy. There's simply not enough money, available. Period. Not enough money to print without the economy coming back. We don't want to do that too soon. I think that the governor is doing a good job. We have a tremendous infectious disease network in the state. Nate Smith, who runs the health department, is just a quality person, somebody that is very well respected. Cam Patterson at the University of Arkansas Medical Center, heading that up, also, is a person that's very, very high in his field, very well respected. So these are the people that he's drawing from, and so I'm excited about the prospect of opening things up, and I know that the governor's going to do that responsibly, and he'll look at the situation as we go forward.
We look at the economic task force. It's going to be led by Stuart Walton, and they've already had meetings and talking how we're going to make our economy come in. And one thing it's kind of unique that I smile about, I seen Stuart Walton, and he goes in, when he first comes to the podium, he says, "Boy, do I need a haircut," because he does look like he's a younger guy, long hair. And I came home, I told my son Seth, I said, "Boy, you need a haircut too. They look identical length of hair." Back when I used to have hair, I'd love to see that. But all of Arkansans need a haircut. So I know those are some things that you see. It doesn't matter what walk of life or what family you're from. We all are got our own little things we got to deal with.
No, you're exactly right. And I would put myself in that category too. I desperately need a haircut. So, well, it makes you appreciate things, Bob. You just take so many things for granted. You take the ability to do things like that and visit with your friends. I mentioned last time we visited, the fact that Kathy's mother-in-law is in assisted living, and not having the ability to go and visit her freely and things. Those are things you just take for granted, and I think that we're all developing a much greater appreciation for our basic freedoms.
Well, that's true, and we keep talking about the nursing homes, and I know that they've been overtaxed, and our thoughts and prayer for all those workers, because they have been basically
very much.
The entire family. They're the only contact those patients have, and as I've stated before, when my father-in-law was in the nursing home, there'd be 4 or 5 different families visiting of that floor of 20 for that nurse. Well, all of a sudden, they're not there. There's nobody helping at any time during the day. So it's very important for us to keep them in mind.
You're exactly right. I think they truly are unsung heroes. Early on, and even now, they're in a situation where they were trying to get the materials that they need, the personal protective things, but they work very hard anyway. But this really has added to their burden and really dealing with trying to keep everybody safe, keeping themselves safe. The last thing they want to do is leave there. Many of them are keeping themselves quarantined from their families because they don't want to pass it on, get it from a family member and then pass it on to the rest of the people in the facility, but also concerned about maybe somebody in the facility has it and then passing on to their relatives. So it's a difficult situation, and I'm just so glad you brought it up because we can't say enough about the great job that they're doing and how much we should appreciate them.
And it's something that I noticed the president talked about truckers. And, it's really funny when you look at the trucking community that some of these guys were in the trucks for many, many hours moving supplies, well-needed supplies for hospitals and things of that nature. And the president tapped you to be on the task force reopening America in the wake of the coronavirus. Part of that is just this supply chain has kind of been disrupted because instead of food going to restaurants where, as many as 40% of Americans eat out at least 2 or 3 times a week, well, all that was shut down. They're going to the grocery stores and we had to change the supply. So that's very complicated. It's much different than just saying you got to go and get your milk off the shelf.
It really is. Back in the old days, we used to have warehouses where we, had a bunch of things and they were replenished periodically. Now the warehouses are the trucks on the road with on-time delivery. Things are very, very efficient. And so what's happened is our supply chain has started to break down a little bit. And the truckers, we mentioned the men and women, that are in the assisted living facilities or nursing homes, how hard they're working. Well, our truckers are doing the same thing in a different way. They've got the problem of not being able to have, the truck stops open like they're used to. It's difficult. They are able to get fuel, basic things, finding a bathroom, that you can use, finding a place to eat, or get some food. All of those things have been curtailed to such an extent that it's made it really difficult. We were very concerned about our food supply chain in the sense that many of our meat packing plants, there's been several outbreaks of the disease in them. Some of the bigger ones have been shut down. And the trouble is that, when you've got a bunch of pigs that are 300 pounds, they're scheduled to get in there and get slaughtered. If they're not done, then there's more waiting to be loaded to take the ones that are waiting. And so you really run into not only a food supply problem, but you also run into animal health issues themselves. So this thing is complicated. It's people are working very, very hard to keep it straight. We talked about, so many things we take for granted and having food on the shelves, the safest, cheapest food supply in the world. But right now we're struggling with that, and yet we're going to do whatever it takes to keep that up and operating. But there is a lot of sacrifice from lots of men and women on that end of things also.
Well, that's true. And, a lot of folks have been wondering, okay, Bob, what is your first meal you're going to have when you go sit down at a restaurant? And I say, well, I know what I'm going to have. I'm going to have me a steak. I just want a steak and a big mashed potatoes, and all the stuff I'm not able to really eat. But it's just something about that, going out. And I think a lot of us are kind of appreciating our barber a whole lot more and our truckers and the nursing home,
And you mentioned, going back to the restaurant. That's one of the huge problems with the supply chain is that so many of our fruits and vegetables went to restaurants. And so that demand there is not there anymore. And it's not only restaurants, it's institutions, it's schools, it's convention centers, where you have the big get-togethers, and all of that has just disappeared. The catfish industry is a good example of that. They're in a situation where 60% of the catfish raised in Arkansas, raised in the South, go to restaurants. And then all of a sudden that market disappears, and you can't convert that to the supermarket. It just, trying the packaging, the way that plants are set up, to specifically can that, the big cans versus the little cans. So all of that eventually starts to come back, but it takes months instead of weeks. And that's one of the reasons that we're seeing a disruption in the supply chain. I think what I'd like to do is, I'm being blessed. Kathy's been cooking good meals, which is a real treat for me. And so I've really appreciated that. I think I'd like some Mexican food.
Something a little different. Everybody's kind of talking about that now. It's kind of like when you said the governor's saying, okay, we're looking at where are we going to eat now? Everybody's kind of thinking, looking ahead. But that's us Americans. We look far ahead. But now one thing I've got to say is my next thing I was snacking on. Last time we talked, I found out those Oreos, vanilla Oreos, are 170 calories per 3 cookies. I've never ate 3 cookies in my life. Well, M&Ms, these M&Ms, they're the peanut-filled ones, 140 for 12 pieces. I've never ate 12 pieces in my life. I've just got to watch this stuff.
You're supposed to give, you're supposed to be in a situation where you give uplifting news to your listeners, and this needs to be a happy time. That's the last thing we need to dwell on is the calories and all this comfort food that we're gobbling down, as we sit at home.
Well, the reason I'm looking at this, I guess I need to share that with our listeners, is because I'm supposed to be doing a physical. I'm supposed to be having a physical since February, and they canceled. And then when all this hit, there's no nurses except like one for the whole state, and she just can't get to me. So I keep looking at, trying to watch my weight, and that's why I'm probably watching this a lot more than normal. So if I could just get tested and get past this physical, I'd be doing great.
Yeah, well, it makes the rest of us feel bad as we munch on the Oreos and munch on the M&Ms.
That's right. That's right. Well, I sure do appreciate you taking time and talking with us. One thing we can say, we do see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think there's so many great things in place, especially the help coming from D.C., the governor with setting guidelines and dates for people to look at instead of just sitting here and wondering what's the next step. So this is really good for Arkansas for sure.
No, I agree with you totally, Bob. But, we're blessed. We live in a wonderful state with wonderful people in a wonderful country. I mean, the wonderfuls just keep going on and on. We really are blessed as a nation. And so this has been a difficult thing. And we have to remember, not only are we going through this, but the entire world is. But we're going to bounce back. And I think a lot of things, telemedicine, a lot of the things, telemental health, all of these kind of things that are going on, there's going to be some positives that come out of this. But right now, we're in a difficult situation. We need to continue doing as the governor asked us to do our social distancing, and the president also. Those kind of things. We've worked hard to get ourselves in the situation we're in. So, we need to continue doing the best that we can to be responsible, taking care of ourselves. But I think most of us would argue, even more importantly, taking care of other people in the sense of not infecting them. So appreciate you.
Well, and that's true. And one other thing, too, is I noticed the State House talking with the Secretary of State and the Lieutenant Governor and all of those in there and Attorney General. It's, they've got a lockdown for the State House as well as they do in D.C. So your staff as well all have to work from home or they're isolated. So it's some challenges, but I haven't seen really a big blip on the side of the public seeing that there's anything changed. But there's a lot more work being done by those staff.
There's more work than I could have imagined would be possible. And I think I talk on the phone and have teleconferences more total in a day than all of my phone time prior to that in my life, before this thing started. And so you can be very, very productive. And, the great news is, the communications ability through texting, email, and then the conference calls has been really good. So that technology is there, and I think people are taking advantage of it. And as a result, being productive, I'm blessed. I've got a great staff that works really hard trying to put out fires and, trying to be helpful, trying to use the power of the office for good. And so the good news is we really have been able to step it up in regard to the telephone calls, the conferencing, and get a lot of things done in that regard. So we're pleased with that.
Yes, I know you've been on with some county judges as well as Lieutenant Governor, had a teleconference you were on. I know there's many that you've been part of, and that's something true. I mean, we've done more through the phone and our apps than we have done. I've done more interviews in the past month than I have in a long time. But part of it is just keeping the information out there, and I know people appreciate that, appreciate your office. How does the Senate work? This is something, just a visual picture for the listeners. There's nobody in the chamber, so it's totally different, isn't it?
It is. There's nobody in the chamber. There's nobody in the Capitol. It's really eerie, Bob. When you go in there, like I said, there's nobody in the hallways. You don't go there unless you've got a reason. Very minimal staff. In the office buildings are the same. In Washington, there is no traffic, which is amazing. It's one of the busiest cities, in the world. It's always ranked as one of the most trafficked cities in the sense of Los Angeles. Probably, I think it's right at the top of the list. Washington is always in the top 3 or 4 of the most traffic, the baddest traffic. But that's non-existent now. There is simply no traffic. So it is eerie. It's just it's an unimaginable situation, and we're seeing the same things, in your neighborhoods and the communities in Arkansas. It's hard to believe that we're in this situation, and yet, as we talked about earlier, I think we're starting to round the corner, get things opened, get people back to work. And that's how we're going to solve the problem. One of the keys to that, maybe the major key, is testing. You mentioned the surge that the governor is pushing. Great thing, but we've got to have a lot of testing, not only to people that feel like they've got symptoms, but really to anybody that wants it, just to make sure. And then maybe people that have to work close together, going ahead and testing them every 2 or 3 days, just to make sure that something hasn't happened. The other thing, Bob, that's going to come out is the antibody test, where you can tell if you've already had it. And I think we're going to be shocked in Arkansas, the number of people that have had the disease and had, virtually either no symptoms or virtually, none. So we'll have to wait and see. But that also will give people confidence, because it looks like if you've had the disease, then with the antibodies you will have some protection against getting it again, at least for a while.
Well, Senator, I know you've got a lot to do and more conference calls to take for sure. And I appreciate you taking time and explaining D.C. That's something a lot of folks didn't realize. I said, no, they're shut down too. Sometimes we think it's only our neighborhood, but it's the whole country. It's not just New York or California, but it's everywhere.
Right. It is, and it truly is amazing. Well, thank you. Like I say, one of the ways that is so important for us to get through these difficult times is good communication. And I know that you and your station are making every effort to get good information out to your listeners, and that's really what it's all about. So we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for taking time and talking with us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.